Hello everyone, this is Shaan and welcome to the Brnkage Podcast. Today we have with us a warrior soul, a mindset and transformation coach, the author of the book Fearless, Sam Led. We had a long, power-packed conversation full of useful insights from life, psychiatry, psychology, spirituality and whatnot. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
What I had in mind that we can begin this conversation with your story, that fascinating story which you told me. And if I have to summarize the story that I should not.
We talked a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stories we talked about.
Yeah. So. And I forgot to hit the record button or we wouldn't be doing this.
and you and I are going to co-market those Fearless t-shirt, that t-shirt you're wearing, because that's just brilliant. Thank you, sir. I love it.
Thank you.
So cool.
So your story, and I'll summarize it if you want to. And if I have to summarize it, I'll say, like, it's kind of a title, Finding Peace in Tragedy. Or if another way I have to summarize, I'll say finding kind of sanity inside insanity. Right? You get the hint?
You're a poet and you didn't even know it. You know, I see a future as a paperback writer, or you know.
You're not the first one who has mentioned this.
Yeah, but dude, you don't look like a writer. You look like you should be running a concert promoter. Like you're too cool looking to be a bookworm, but you are. But I'm a bookworm too. So I'm a nerd too. Go ahead.
Same. So shall we start with your story, that event which changed your life?
Sure. Well, my name is Sam Led, and I'm a transformational coach and soon to be author of the book Fearless, from Santa Barbara, California. And I'm just a normal guy that had some really extraordinarily circumstances, something that happened to me 18 years ago that kind of maybe see for the first time why I saw suffering as not a physical event, but a cognitive event, that my suffering wasn't coming from the outside, it was coming from the inside, even though the outside was a mess. And so in 2005, 2004, and ladies and gentlemen, I've been a coach and a facilitator and worked with groups and companies and doing leadership training, and I worked as a mediator and ombudsman, and worked in the public policy field in the United States for many years, and also am a woo spectrum on the spiritual and alternative healing space in my career. I'm a Reiki practitioner, and I do light therapy, and I'm also an intuitive coach. So I've always had that awareness about the world of the formless, the world outside of the physical reality that we all tap into every day. We just don't pay attention to enough. But in 2005, had something happen to me that really shook me to the point where it was either, okay, I'm going to die, or I'm going to end up in a legal conundrum that will end up me being in jail or dead, either one. Well, thank God neither of them happened. But my suffering, being caught up in a legal conundrum or in a legal issue, is no fun, and is very, very scary for not only myself, but my family and those affected. I got through it, not unscathed, but I got through it. And 100% of my suffering was not coming from the actual event, even though my brain was telling me that that's why I'm depressed, or that's why I'm anxious, or that's why I'm having all this PTSD stuff happen. but I've been doing that all my life, that my thinking, being caught up in my head, the noise in my head was my suffering. And that's hard for a lot of us to conceptualize because we conceptualize, right? Because we're taught that wisdom comes from our brain, from our supercomputer. Wisdom doesn't come from there. 100% of our wisdom, our insight, comes from intuition, comes from a good feeling, comes from that quiet voice inside of you that we all have. That is our God-given gift. That is our internal GPS that we don't pay attention to enough because it's not screaming at us. We believe the noise is true because it's loud and it gets our attention, right? It's not the calm voice, that bizarre calmness that we experience every day. It's bizarre because it's so calm, it's so wonderful, it's so quiet that you don't even need to meditate for. And we see it all day long. We get our best ideas. We fall in love. We make our money. We find solutions to our problems in that space. And I survived all those years ago, this horrible tragedy that happened to me and to my family, not by trying to think myself out of it, right? Not trying to, intellectualize it all, because I was doing that and I was really suffering in my thinking. But when I would drop into those quiet moments outside, walking in the park, or just spending a quiet moment with my partner or family member, or writing, or listening to a piece of music, or doing nothing, or just crying in the grief, in the sadness, because it's all right. It's all okay, but there's nothing wrong with any of it. There's no problem. I thought there was a problem. And even if the worst possible scenario happened, I knew it would always be okay. My thinking wasn't okay at the moment, but it all settled anyways, because I'm here talking to you, my brother. So, yeah. And the book is called Fearless, as you can see in the t-shirt.
We will talk about it a little bit, as much as we can. Right, because the book is not out now.
Yeah,
it will be, and we'll talk about it later on. So the thing you talked about, this is the reason why I hesitate when it comes to conversations which circles around something related to this word spirituality.
I do too. And I hate that word spirituality because there's nothing extraordinary about it, right?
Exactly.
Nothing is. It's so normal, it's so boring, and it's so everyday. Yeah. And because we all experience it, we just don't pay attention to it enough.
Yeah. And I remember you mentioning that this
I hate that word,
is corrupted by thought, something like that.
It's corrupted by Instagram. I'm just kidding. We're all guilty of reading those memes. God is in all of us, or I post them. Some of them they're really good, but see, it's all our judgment and thinking around anything. When I saw Shaan, and how I survived this tragedy was I realized that I was making my story up as I was dealing with my legal issues that were so horrible. That those legal issues were neutral. There was going to be an ending to the process, and whether whatever happened is whatever happened. But what was the problem was my brain making up a story, a narrative, a drama, melodrama. It was like a movie. It was like a great Netflix, drama that I love to watch.
The most fascinating thing about your stories, we try to intellectualize until, I am sitting here in my home, right? That's why I'm gonna intellectualize. But you were in certain kind of situation where your brain kind of gave up, right? It just settled down. When you I remember you telling me that story that you were in that home and then your friends came to pick you up.
Okay, so that's another. Yeah, so that and that's in my book too. But you might want to give some.
Were you talking about two different stories?
Okay. Yes. Well, the first part is in my book too. I don't know if we talked about the second part. And ladies and gentlemen, Shaan and I had like a 3-hour conversation afterwards because there was so much. Shaan is a wonderful interviewer, and he's also a smart guy and with a big heart. So we were just, mind wandering, engaging in cognitive reverie all day long.
Trust him, he's lying.
Yes, and I wouldn't stop talking either. It's my fault. The second major event that's in my book was the California wildfires. And those of you who are listening outside of the American Southwest and India and elsewhere, I don't know if you have wildfires in India. Probably not, or maybe you do.
No,
I don't know. Okay, it's the scariest thing you've ever. It's so bizarre, so surreal, and so biblical at the same time. I mean, literally, it's if you follow the Christian Bible, which I don't, but if you do, it's definitely a story out of the Bible. Literally, imagine the mountains around you. If you have mountains where you are right now, the landscape, the trees, the grass, buildings, cars, all on fire for tens of thousands of square miles, burning at temperatures between 700 and 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, I don't know what it is in Celsius or whatever, but
not good at it
and that was the second story that I built some context around. And if you want me to share the story, I can, but it was in 2017, California had, in Southern California, we had the worst wildfire, the biggest wildfire and the most devastating wildfire to both life and property in the history of the state. And one morning I just woke up and I could smell smoke. And you don't want to smell smoke in California because it's so dry. It's like a tinderbox, I mean, literally, when people smoke outside, there's $1,000 fine for if you litter because you could start a fire just with your cigarette. That's how dry it is in California. So I woke up in the morning in my townhome in Santa Barbara, and I smelled smoke. I couldn't breathe, actually. My whole room was just filled with soot and ash, a cloud of it. Couldn't see in front of me, couldn't see behind me, couldn't see my window. 2 or 3 minutes later, the fire alarm goes off because of the smoke. And that was kind of like the drama behind it. And I'm just like, holy shit, excuse my French. We have a fire going on. I woke up to it. It had soot all over me, all over my pajamas and my hair, my face. It was awful. It looked like nuclear fallout. Thank God we don't know about that, but it really looked like a bomb dropped in my place. I get out of bed and I can't breathe. I basically crawl to the kitchen of my townhome. I look outside and you can't see the sun. It's being blocked by the soot and ash. My car is covered with soot and ash. The windshield wiper, the rubber on the windshield wipers was melted to the glass. That's how hot it was. I opened the door and you could feel the heat just, it sucked all the moisture out of my sinuses. Basically, I look up, the mountains are on fire. In the distance, the mountains are on fire. I see a car in the distance on fire. I can't see across the street because I live across from the beach. I can't see across the street to the beach. It looked like we just got hit with a nuclear bomb, basically. And the ash was the fallout from the bomb. So I thought I was going to die. But instead of me panicking, I got really calm for no reason. I got really present. And the bizarre thing is that calmness turned into actually a feel-good feeling. And it wasn't because of the fire. It wasn't because of any of that. I was not up in my head at that moment. It wasn't the fire that caused me to have that experience. It was, I was having that experience anyways, right? So literally, I thought this was the end. I was literally on the floor of my kitchen because, hot air rises. So that was the only place where I could really breathe. I put a warm towel over my head. I splashed my face with water to get the soot and ash off. I put warm towels on the doors so it would prevent the more smoke from coming in. The power then went off. You could hear fire engines everywhere. It was horrific, but I was calm for no reason. Very calm. I mean, I didn't eat any, I was literally just woke up. It was early in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. So I was literally preparing to die. I wasn't scared. And some would say, well, that's, a lot of that happens when you feel like you have no reason to live anymore, or, your body's preparing for it. That's not what happened.
You weren't giving up. You weren't hopeless, right?
What's interesting? I was relaxing, not into hope, but I was relaxing into hopelessness. Naturally, not the brain doing anything. It wasn't the body's autonomic systems, the breathing and the respiration changing or anything. Literally, my soul, my spirit, my conscious self, not my brain, not the machinery, not the form, not this meat, this body of machinery. It was literally like I dropped completely out of my brain, out of my mind, into the present, so present. And so literally I just was very aware of every single second, every single moment going on. So I'm sitting there in my kitchen in this beautiful place on fire. For thousands of square miles were on fire. This fire was all the way into there was two separate fires. This was the Thompson fire. There was another fire that was burning in the Los Angeles area. I'm about 120 miles north of LA, which is like, I don't know, 180 kilometers, a little bit more, 200 kilometers. And so this small California beach town was on fire, and the power goes out. I'm like, oh, well, okay. It might as well go out, right? Everything else is dying, burning up. And all of a sudden, when I gave up hope, but it was relaxing into the hopelessness. It wasn't like hopeless, like I'm giving up on life. It was just hopelessness. I'm letting go, not letting go of my life, but letting go of trying to control my life or trying to find a way out of the house, or like, you know what I mean? It was just like, I left it up to a higher power, or to whatever you want to call it. But that happened naturally. It wasn't like I was thinking of it. So long story short, about 35 minutes later, and then we had cell phone service, which is really strange since the power went out. And usually if the power goes out and you're in a major disaster, you lose cell phone service too. My phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's a dear friend of mine. And she's like, Sam, I'm coming by your house. I'm picking you up, and we're getting the hell out of here.
Right.
I mean, what are the odds of that happening? I mean, because everyone else was in the same situation. I couldn't get in my car and go anywhere because, first of all, I couldn't go outside. It was so hot, and just you couldn't breathe. I couldn't, and also my windshield wipers were melted to the windshield, so I couldn't get rid of the soot off the, all that dirt and dust and soot and ash all over my car. So I was stuck there. I don't know how she got to my place. It was like, it went by so quickly. It was like, it literally, I found a couple things. I took my passport and my license and some cash, and I had, I had some things I took, but I left everything in the apartment. And she drove by my place. I got in the car, and we sped off to the airport. I didn't have a plane ticket. I had barely, I had the clothes on my back and a couple other items. And we managed to get to LAX, and I fly out. The drive there was even worse. The 405 freeway, which is a famous freeway going into LAX, both sides of these huge hills and mountains were on fire. It looked like a hellscape from a disaster movie. And we get there and we leave the car there, like, screw it, we're just going to leave it there. We parked it in long-term parking, and I flew out, and she basically saved my life. And it was interesting because a couple of weeks later, when I got back to California, and her and I were talking about it, it was so automatic. The whole experience was so automatic.
Did you have that experience before, or it was your first time, like getting out of your mind, kind of?
Well, we all do it. All of us. You do it. I do it. We just don't pay attention to it enough. That state of getting out of our mind, out of our thinking, is some call it the flow state. Athletes experience it, and where time speeds up or slows down when they're doing their best, when they're performing their best, when they're shooting 3-point shots, or etc. Artists do it when they create their masterpiece. Writers do it. Businessmen do it. It's that space when we are completely free from our thinking. Now, we have glimpses of it during the day because our thinking settles, and then, it's like our thinking is not static, right? Thinking moves through us. Thought moves through us like weather, right? If you want a great metaphor for that is like we're the sky, and thought and thinking are clouds. Some clouds are thunderstorm clouds, right? Some clouds are puffy white clouds, nice gentle clouds. And when it's the thunderstorm clouds, when we're not in fight or flight mode, when we're not being chased by someone with a knife, or we're not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, all of the other noise is just noise. And what the brain is doing is telling us, hey, Shaan, you're too zoomed into the problem right now. Pump the brakes, back off, let your thinking settle. Don't take any of it seriously. Don't take it personal, even if it's someone else making you feel a certain way, whether it's your boss, your girlfriend, your parents, the tax man, whoever it is. You're in no fit shape to react or respond to anyone when your quality of thinking is pretty crappy, when you're in a low state of mind. You're in no shape to respond to anybody. So let your thinking settle. Just sit with it. Like it always will settle, because we have this built-in, perfectly aligned system that settles on its own, because our brain has an operating system that has this automatic kind of reboot when we're caught up in our thinking, when we're in a bad mood, when we're feeling anxious or scared, sometimes, most of the time for no reason, or because of our conditioning and our beliefs and judgments about an outside stimulus. Like for me, I had a phobia of driving on the freeway for forever, which was completely nonsense. And once I saw that the quality of my thinking is pretty poor sometimes when I'm driving, because of my brain blaming my state of mind on, the freeway must be not safe, right? It's the big bad wolf. But no, it isn't. That's completely false. Once you see the trick the brain plays innocently, because it tries to keep you safe, and we know that thought can't keep you safe. The brain is great for keeping you safe when you're being chased by an enemy. It has a built-in kind of emergency response system, right? But it's pretty crappy deciphering the difference between your boss yelling at you, or you having unpaid bills, right? Or coming down with COVID, and the saber-tooth tiger. It can't tell the difference, because we have an emergency operating system, our lizard brain, our limbic system, that hasn't really had an update, a software update since the Paleolithic era. So we innocently misuse the equipment on board our human system.
And
because we're living go ahead.
The funny thing about the limbic brain is that
it is very funny when you really think about it.
we take action first, and then we try to intellectualize it, right?
I know,
But
it's the stupidest thing. It's like trying to intellectualize when your dog is barking for no reason, or when your cat, it's all reflex oriented. There's no
yeah,
just because you're intellectual, just because you have, look, I have a master's degree doesn't mean I'm smart, but I have this inner wisdom within me, just like you do, Shaan, and just like everybody else on the planet does. But we've been taught through our own conditioning, through our own belief systems, how we're raised. We need to unpack that conditioning, right?
exactly.
The conditioning is all wrong. We have it backwards. Psychologists have it backwards. Psychiatrists have it backwards.
Yeah.
Everyone's got it backwards because, to no fault of their own, it's easier to look at our outside world as the reason why we are suffering in our thinking, and the reason why we have PTSD, and the reason why we have grief. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things, and we demonize it. Like grief, there's nothing wrong with grief. There's nothing wrong with PTSD, because it's exactly the same thing as I mentioned when our brain is caught up in a anxious loop or in a fearful loop, right? It settles on its own all the time. We don't need to do anything about it. And some people have noisy brains, and great technology has brought us medication. The advancements in medicine. Medication is great to calm the noise down because it is just a machine. But who we are is a lot bigger than that. And you don't have to call it spiritual. You don't have to call it woo-woo. It's a truth. Our conscious self is where all of us are. Our North Star, our inner well-being. All of us under the contamination of our thinking. Now, thinking is a gift. We just use it wrong sometimes, and we all innocently do it, especially in this society we live in when there's a lot of overstimulation. Remember, our limbic system was designed way before Facebook and 24-hour news cycles and Zoom, right? Like, our brain's not designed, so the brain has no idea it's like, what's this ongoing bright lights being flashed to me all the time? It's not what the brain understands.
Yeah. So when you talk about that brain settles down by itself, if you let go, right? And you gave this fascinating example.
Well, let's stop there 1 second. Stop there 1 second. It's not letting go. You don't need to let go of anything.
Okay.
Letting go is, for example, my uncle just passed away a month ago. But he also had a wonderful life, and he survived with lymphoma and the form of pancreatic cancer for a long time, for years. He was suffering physically, but he was really happy. How do you explain that? Versus
pain, he wasn't suffering if he was happy.
Well, but because he understood how the system worked. Because without, you don't need training for this. As a coach, I point people back to their well-being, to their default state, to who they are. It's not like you have to do a technique or go get 20 years of psychotherapy to unpack the past. Doesn't matter. None of that matters, but we think it does, in quotes. But it's all made up. It feels real because we feel our thinking. Remember, Shaan, we're living through a world of thought and thinking. Sorry about that. It's just my office phone. We live through a world of thought. We don't live through a world of our outside circumstances, because our brain is constantly narrating, updating, editing, judging, compartmentalizing, categorizing, filling in the blanks. Like we think that's truth, and it's such baloney. And then we also go back to the memories that we store, because our brain is a sponge, and then those memories press play, and then we think because of what happened in the past that it's going to happen again, and it packages it up and it creates this whole catastrophe, and then we think that's truth, because then our brain is secreting neuroadrenaline and cortisol and all these neurochemicals that make it feel stressful and anxious. Oh my God, we've just taken the bait. But the great thing is, remember, we live through a psychological experience. The psychological experience is like going to a movie theater, right? And watching a movie. Say the movie sucks. Like the last Star Wars really sucked. I don't know if you want to see it before COVID. It really, I went to I'm aging myself. I saw the first Star Wars in the movie theaters in 1977. I'm a little older than you. I mean, I don't have any gray hair. I don't have any gray hair, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm older.
You must have died.
So, no, dude.
Sorry. No, you haven't.
I'm showing you my hair, ladies and gentlemen. There's no dye. It's called I'm lucky and very lucky.
Star
and
Wars,
grateful.
dude.
Oh, stop it. Exactly. So you think of thought and thinking, especially when it's going sideways, when someone calls us an asshole or a girlfriend breaks up with us or a dog dies, whatever. Even though some of that, it's okay to be upset when your girlfriend breaks up with you, because that's the natural way of the system moving some turbulent, uncomfortable feeling and thinking through. But if it lingers, we got to see it as, oh my goodness, I'm caught up in a thought program that I've inserted unassumingly, like a floppy disk. We have all these thought programs running in the background, kind of like an app. If your battery dies on your phone quickly, it means you have too many apps open, right? So you get an app to help reduce the amount of energy that's being sucked out of your battery because the apps are draining your battery. Well, that's the same thing that the brain does automatically. So when you're in a movie theater watching a movie you don't like, you can always walk out of the movie, right? Right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to sit you don't have to sit through it. You have a choice, free will, to walk out.
Yeah.
Same thing with our thinking.
That's what I meant by letting go, because I remember one fascinating example you gave of a pilot. You have some friend you were telling me. You were explaining me that in a plane, when a plane is kind of crashing, you don't pilots don't touch the controller, right? They just leave the controller and just plane just comes up and levels up, right?
Exactly. And this is a metaphor. That's a metaphor that a lot of us three principles coaches share. I stole it from Michael Neal and he's okay with that. But it's the truth of the truth is, if we think of ourselves as the plane, right? Mm-hmm. We're the plane. And whether you fly from here to New Delhi or to India or Australia or to wherever you fly, you're going to have turbulence. It's just, It is a matter of fact. And turbulence can't bring a plane down. I mean, 99.999% of the time, you're going to be okay. It's just a little annoying and it can be unsettling, right? When you're in this tin cylinder flying at 600 miles an hour at 36,000 feet. Yeah, it's a little bit unsettling, but you're going to be okay. So just like turbulence, there's little bumps, there's big bumps, and then there's when the plane drops a little bit and you hit a big air pocket. Well, the same thing with thought and thinking. It's thought turbulence is when we're really caught up and anxious, and then their brain is blaming, and because the brain always needs to find a fall guy, because that's what brain does. The brain has to figure it out, and in a split second, the reason why you're feeling this way is because Shaan is not being nice to you, right? Or you just lost your job. So, but if you see anxiety, right, as thought turbulence, especially if a plane hits a turbulence and then the plane loses hydraulics, which you never want to happen, but never happens, which because planes have redundant systems on there to keep it. But say the redundant system fails and the plane's in a dive, right? So if the plane's in a dive, the pilot does not hold on to the stick, right, for dear life, because he knows through the natural laws of physics, the plane will level out on its own in a dive. You never want to do that. You let the plane level out on its own. The same thing with our thinking. If you try to fix your thinking, push your thinking down, use thought stopping techniques, or any modality that you've been taught, or tapping, or I think it's, emotional freedom technique. And look, if it works for you, then great. But, don't listen to what I'm saying. Go do your own, soul searching for what I'm talking about. tapping doesn't work. None of that stuff works long term, because our brain has the ability, because it has its own app that, what does it do? It gets rid of the apps, or it turns off the old apps that are sucking the energy out of the system temporarily. Our brain has its built-in self-settling system. So when the plane's in a dive, the pilots let go of the controls and the plane levels out on its own. The same thing with thought and thinking. If we let it. Now, no one likes to feel anxious. No one likes to feel depressed. No one likes to be scared. But why are we scared of our experience? Is a question. Why do we need to fix something that's not broken? Like, look, the other day I got caught up and I believe, it's also okay to be scared of your experience. But the more you see that it's just thought and thinking, that it's made up, that it doesn't mean it's truth. Like, you don't have to be afraid of your experience, because your experience is being made up and created in real time and recreated in real time over and over and over and over again until you die. If you want to have a happier life, it doesn't mean you're not going to get your knocks. It doesn't mean you're not going to have problems, financial problems or health problems or whatever. It just means that when those things happen, you can brave the turbulence a little bit better. Like, you can just put the seatbelt on, hold on to, the seat for a little while until the pilot, which is your brain, finds a calmer cruising altitude. I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah.
Earlier, we talked about not taking our thoughts seriously. And you also said that you give no value to your past, right? I think it will be insightful if we explore these two words, thoughts and past, and how they are related, and what would be the world like kind of without them, right? If you are not taking your thoughts seriously, that means.
That's a wonderful question. I think the best way to illustrate it is through story, through a client story. And also, you have to understand something. Thought is a gift, because it is kind of like the bridge between the world of the form and the formless. Like, if there wasn't thought and thinking, if you didn't have a brain, that kind of was I call it Google Translate, because that's how a lot of times the brain deciphers things. Yeah. Like, especially with me, I have ADHD, and sometimes my Google Translate is in overdrive, like missing cues, kind of not understanding when, I'm not listening or paying attention sometimes, and not understanding the question. And I might give a wrong answer because I completely mind wandered my way out of the question. Mm-hmm. The same thing, our brain is brilliant at modulating organ systems and doing some great equations in your head, but it has a hard time with understanding the world outside of the physical. So without thought or thinking, you wouldn't be here. Right. Your parents wouldn't have met. None of us would be here. So we kind of need thought, thinking and thought to guide us through as a translator. I mean, when it's such a gift, but we just misuse it, because just like thought and thinking is a gift that brings people together and gets people fall in love and get married. If the falling in love part is not the thought and thinking, the falling in love part is what I'm pointing to, because all of us at our default state are loved, well-being, calm, loving, peaceful, perfect. We're all perfect. And the metaphor I mentioned to you during our call, our pre-interview call, was that we're diamonds. You remember it?
Yeah.
We're diamond, and I'm stealing this metaphor from
and shit.
Yeah, I'm stealing this metaphor from Michael again. We're diamonds covered in poop or shit. Yeah. Can I say shit? Okay. Diamonds covered in poop, and then layered in lipstick. Like, our core, we're all diamonds, and that's not bullshit. That's the truth. But we have a mask on. The mask we think is truth, and the poop is all the thinking, the experience of being human, and the psychological experience of our day-to-day lives that we sometimes get contaminated by thought when it's, not is running sideways, when our thinking's moving sideways, when we're caught up and we're in a low mood, or the quality of our thinking's distorted. We think it's real. We think it's truth. And we all do it. We all get caught up. There's no escape from it. And that's why modalities don't work long-term or ever. And I hate modalities because, and I say that strongly. And, you can probably have 3 or 4 of your audience members argue with me, a psychologist with 12 years of training, pointing to, you don't know what you're talking about, Sam. I'm a trained, certified, blah, 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 with medical school, blah, blah, blah. I know about how the brain works better than you do because I know I dissected brains in gross anatomy. Bullshit, dude. You know why? Because that same doctor is having the same experience I'm having. But underneath the psychological experience, all of us are loving, kind, creative, calm souls when we drop out of our thinking. And reason why modalities don't work is because it overcomplicates the system, a system that self-corrects on its own. And we see examples of it all day long. We just don't pay attention to it enough. It's kind of like, and this is the other example with my client. I had a client a couple of years ago, like 5 or 6 years ago. I was working with a client who was recovering from drugs and alcohol. He was diagnosed bipolar. I don't like the label bipolar because it doesn't really mean anything. There are behaviors that are connected to it, and there are consequences for bad behavior. I'm not saying that it's psychologically innocent to do harm to others or to do harm to yourself. If you hurt somebody, you should go to jail. If you hurt yourself, you should get some help. But we are looking at it the wrong way, because when we see that it's not that there's something wrong with us or that we can't get along with others, it's just that the quality of our thinking sometimes goes sideways. When our quality of thinking is shitty, like we all experience, that's not a time to try to figure stuff out. When it settles, when we're calm, that's the time. So my client, he was tough, man. He was a hard to treat, and I had reservations in the beginning, because this understanding is really wonderful. When we've settled and we're calm, we can really see clearly. Because when we're caught up in our thinking, when we're really gone crazy up here in our brain momentarily, we can't see clearly, man. It's like a windshield that has dirt all over it, right? The windshield wipers is like what the brain does to level out the thinking, to bring the plane, when the plane finds a calmer cruising altitude, right? Yeah. So the client presented to me, before I even met him, he was acting belligerent. He was screaming and yelling at the poor nurses and the therapists on staff. And he was just really combative, complaining and didn't want to be there, and really literally screaming and yelling, and just, he was just not pleasant to be around. And then he meets with me and he looks at me. He's like, "Oh, good. Another one. It's like, that thinks they can help me. It's going to fill me up with medication and psychobabble and blah, blah, blah. So what are you going to tell me that I already don't know? What are you going to tell me that I already know?" So, this guy is, I'm up against his ego. He's scared. I'm up against his conditioning about his experience with addiction, his hopelessness. Right. And I sat there and I'm like, "Hey, man, we're in sunny California. Do you like the Dodgers? Have you been to a Dodgers?" We just start talking like two guys, like complete not mumbo jumbo. Nothing about his problem. Nothing about his legal situation. Yeah. Just like, we started laughing, started having a good time. He started telling me about his career as a musician, about his ex-wife. I mean, we were just having like two blokes sitting, having a pint, talking about life, just having fun. He settled. An hour later, he wasn't that crazy person screaming and yelling at everybody. He was just a lovely person to be around. And that's what I'm pointing to. Yeah. And we drop into that space all the time. We don't live, we have this, when we believe that our human experience, our experience, our judgmental experience, our critical experience, our momentary, fearful thinking is truth, that's when we get ourselves in trouble, right? But when we let it settle, and we all have crazy thoughts, man. Most of us don't act on our crazy thoughts. I hope some of us do. I mean,
we only pay attention to things when they go wrong, right? That's why we don't pay attention when things go calm, when we are present.
But what if it's okay to pay attention to? See, the thing is, it doesn't matter. Like, if you can be okay with your experience, yeah. But if you can, so what I'm pointing to with my client is that when he settled, and we were just two guys, he was so comfortable and comfort and calm and laughing and smiling and just being him. He dropped out of his thinking. He was present with me. Then I could share the experience, share the teachings of how the mind really works, that we have this inner GPS, and we have this inner intelligence underneath our thinking that is guiding us through life if we let it, that our system is designed perfectly, that to level out on its own, that we don't have to change anything about ourselves, that we're perfect. And when we just notice more, when we're aware more, when our thinking goes sideways, when we are caught up, when we are in a low mood, to not take it personal. And also, that's not a time to make any real decisions. Let it settle, and carry on. It's that simple. But our brain overcomplicates things. And then a psychologist will say, no. It's more complicated than that. You need to, what you have is a serious problem. You need to you need to spend more time in therapy. But why? Right. So for what? So you can regurgitate what happened 20 years ago. You need to work on this. You need to process this. We need to process this trauma. To where? Where are you processing it? Is there a trauma processing plant down the street where you drop it off? No. It's in the past. What does the past have anything to do with right now? When we stay in the right now, we're less apt to getting caught up in the past. But if we get caught up in the past, it's okay too. Who cares? Yeah. Don't fear your experience, ladies and gentlemen. It's not going to kill you. Look, what happened in the past, if it was terrible, okay, it's terrible. But right now, like, you have the chance to live in the moment and to see what's possible when you're present. Go ahead.
I think once you understand what past is exactly, then you will never trust anyone who will say, let's go back there and solve the problem. You'll say, problem is right here, right now. Why the hell I will go 20 years back in my mind, past which is dead? It doesn't make any sense. What is your understanding of the past? That's why I have that question.
The past?
Right. Yeah.
Look.
Like, what is the significance of past in your life?
To me, personally? Or
you personally.
Well, listen. I want to live the best life I can with what I have. Okay? And I'm going to live my life in the present moment as much as I can. When I get caught up in my thinking, when my brain presses play on an old memory that's stored in my memory bank, okay, sometimes I'll suffer, but I don't have to grab onto that thought. I mean, I don't really have to, and I don't need to also like do a technique in order to push that memory down. Like, especially for people that have been, or that have war trauma. No one's saying that's not real. That PTSD is not real. But what is it really? Past memories that have triggered the body's fight or flight system under duress, that the brain is stored and it keeps pressing play when we're triggered by whatever, right? Once a combat veteran very innocently sees like, oh yeah, that's thought too. Like, it's fucking made up. Excuse my French. I'm just me. I just talk freely. I don't, and that there's nothing wrong with them. That innocently they've taken the bait. That their experience doesn't have to be so terrible. Like right now, they're not in Iraq, or they're not in wherever they are, whatever combat zone they
what do you
suffer
mean by
war trauma.
innocently?
What? I'm sorry, what?
What do you mean by innocently they're taking the bait? Like,
well, because innocently we have no control of our thought. innocently means is that it's nobody's fault. It's not like you're doing it on purpose. Like a combat veteran is sleeping and all of a sudden he wakes up, he has a nightmare. Like the brain is going to do what it's going to do. Remember, you're dealing, sorry with the phone, it's my office. We're dealing with a limbic system, a lizard brain, a reflexive system that hasn't really had an update in a long time. We're dealing with a very, very instinctual reflexive system. It doesn't know better. It's not smart. We think it is, but it isn't. And so that's what I call innocent, especially for when combat veterans, when people that are dealing with PTSD and other traumas that, when they wake up in the middle of the night and they have nightmares and they can't sleep, they're depressed, anxious, they can't work. Once they see the nature of how thought and thinking works, how mind works, that they don't have to be scared of their experience, that it may happen, but they don't have to be scared of it. It's not fun. Look, I'm not saying any of this is fun. Just like for me, when my fear of driving on the freeway, which is most people would laugh at me, it's the same thing as PTSD or any kind of innocent pressing play of the brain's memory bank. It's like, you have this hard drive in your computer that has files on it, right? Yeah. Well, you can go to access any of those files if you want. Well, the brain randomly accesses those files a lot of times just randomly for no reason. Like we don't have any control of our thought and thinking. And once we make peace with thought and our thoughts and that move through us, like weather, like it's an energy source moving through us, which it really is. Well, it's so liberating, man. Like I don't have to control my thinking now. I can just have agency and I can be more selective of the thoughts that move through me. Remember, I think I mentioned to you in our pre-interview call about, thought and thinking is kind of like going to a buffet at a restaurant, right? You can ultimately choose. Did we talk about that? A good metaphor is that we can ultimately choose what thoughts we want to pick from that are serving our greater purpose. But we do that anyways. We do have discriminatory power over that. But because we feel our thinking, it feels like horrible sometimes, right? But when we are not afraid of the fear, it's not going to kill you. When we're not afraid of it, and even though there's sometimes a physiological reaction, like when I've had a panic attack driving on the freeway because I was so zoomed into my fear, which is completely not real, made up in the moment. You know how I got out of it? My inner wisdom was telling me, hey, Sam, you know what? You're too zoomed in right now, and your brain is doing its dance innocently. You know what? Why don't you pull over on the side of the road until you're safe?
Were those words?
And that's the inner wisdom.
Was it in words?
It was a calm voice inside of me.
No, so it was a voice speaking to you.
It was a voice speaking to me, but we all have that voice speaking to us. We just don't pay attention to it enough because it's a calm voice. Like, for instance, before I prep for this call, I don't prep for these calls. It just comes to me. Then before we speak, I'll write a couple of notes just that comes to me, just to get me started, right? And I was anxious. I don't know why. I'm not, our conversation's amazing. Like, what am I to be anxious about? But I'm anxious sometimes. I'm not scared of being anxious, right? Just like I was speaking in front of a group of people and I completely lost my train of thought. It went sideways. There was 50 people in the audience, in the room. Before I'd be like, fuck, I'm going to self-combust in front of, I'm just going to, lose my crap, lose my shit and just have an anxiety attack in front. Or I could just say, you know what? Oh shit. I just lost my train of thought and just be authentic about it. Like, we're all human. We all do it. Right. When we try to force our experience, right? When we try to be someone we're not, when we try to censor ourselves, obviously, I'm not talking about, in front of your family and they don't like curse words, or if you're in a holy sanctuary or you're in a church or a mosque or whatever, or a synagogue. I'm talking like you can't censor Shaan. Who Shaan is divine. Who Shaan is a diamond. But the lipstick and the shit sometimes
takes over,
prevents the diamond from shining. You crazy diamond. That's a Pink Floyd song. Shining on you, you crazy diamond, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay too. But when we're afraid of the shit, because we put the lipstick on, is when we get ourselves in trouble. But even when we do that, we have the chance to learn from that. Instead of having to, do a technique, go to a therapist for 30 years, which, therapy is great. And look, there's some well-meaning, wonderful therapists out there, and I'm not poo-pooing therapy. But what I am saying is that we drop into the present moment. We have well-being as our default state anyways. And the less we fear our experience, the less we fear our panic attacks, the less we fear our PTSD symptoms. Like, it's horrible. Like, I got the vaccine, right? I hate needles, man. Like, avoidance. Well, I got the vaccine. Everything's fine. I didn't, I didn't grow like a third arm. I'm here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm fine. So, and again, I love to read this quote from Terence McKenna that kind of talks about this.
Yeah, sure.
But when it comes down to it, it's okay to fear your experience, but then not fear your experience. What I mean is that how many more examples of fearing your experience of avoiding something because you're phobic of a spider and you won't go to on a camping trip because you think there are going to be spiders that are going to eat you or poison, or snakes, right?
I remember you saying anticipation creates suffering.
I'm sorry, what?
I remember you saying that our anticipation creates suffering. Anticipation when we basically assume something that it is there and we get fearful of that. For the example you gave me of the spider experiment the psychologist did, they told those people that there are spiders in that box, and there were no spiders actually, but
okay,
people
so and that's a great example. And again, I'm giving credit to Michael Neal because he's a mentor of mine who I truly I'm grateful that I was introduced to his books and his teachings. He's just sharing the same wisdom as Sid Banks did, and I'm doing right now. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not a cult. This is just showing you how it's an understanding. It's how the mind works. It's how it really works. Not what they're telling you, man. And I'm saying that lovingly. Psychologists, psychiatrists, neurologists, every kind of professional that you look up to get help from are sharing this understanding in prisons and all over the world and in doctors' offices and psychologists' offices. It's just how it really works. And we have it backwards. It's not outside in, it's inside out. And that's 100% the truth. So help you God. Okay. So the what you're talking about is the experiment that these researchers did, where they brought a whole bunch of people into a room that had an acute phobia of, I think it was a black widow spider. I'm not 100% sure. And the researcher, when he is wearing a white lab coat, he's like, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have this big white box here, and it's filled with 50 of the most poisonous spiders. And the whole room is freaking out. Like, people are like running everywhere. Like, it's like, I'll send you the YouTube video. It's pretty funny. It's not funny because we all are scared of something. I think it's arachnophobia. That's what it's called. And after they are screaming and yelling, he gets on the mic, and it was because it was a big room. There's a lot of people in the room. He's like, ladies and gentlemen, come back to the center. I have something to show you. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? We don't want to be anywhere near you. You have this box full of deadly spiders. He opens the box and there's nothing in it. I mean, I don't know how many more examples you need, ladies and gentlemen, that how we make everything up in real time. We make up story all the time. Your brain loves you. It doesn't know better. And it's when you see that the brain is trying to it does it in very strange and uncomfortable ways sometimes, trying to tell you that you're too zoomed into your problem, to your fears, that you're believing the wrong stuff, that you just need to step back and let the system settle on its own. You'll be okay. Someone asked me in an interview that I was on, I was a guest on another podcast a couple of weeks ago, how do you, why then does your brain do this? Why does your brain produce these thoughts that are, scary thoughts and fearful thoughts? I don't know. It just does. Why? I mean, there are clouds in the sky. I don't know, where they came from. We have theories, I guess, but one theory is the Big Bang theory. We can go into that. But I'm going to guess the reason why our brain does this is because through evolution, the brain hasn't caught up with the modern times, right? Mm. I mean, if you go back tens of thousands of years, we were hunter-gatherers. Like, it was a lot simpler back then. I'm not saying it was better, and people didn't live as long, and they didn't have Facebook back then, but they did have you hunt, you gather, you bring it back to the tribe, or to the group, you defend your group, you procreate, you create children, offspring, and the cycle continues. It wasn't like there were taxes and social media and cars and all that stuff. So I think that that thought has gotten more complex, just as our society has gotten, technology has made it more complex, for better or for worse. But knowing that our brain is constantly overstimulated and it's doing the best job it can with the equipment it has on board, to have more discernment over the thoughts that are not serving your greater purpose. Like, you don't have to believe everything that's coming through your head. And we don't, because, we've all had, I mean, I'm a human being and you are, and I have this human psychological experience. We've all had homicidal thoughts about, our sister or brother, like, they're so annoying, I want to kill them. But no, I mean, you know what I mean? We just have thoughts. Mm-hmm. We have crazy thoughts sometimes. We don't act on them. Well, that's the same thing as when we're scared. We're caught up in a low mood. I'm not saying you have to ignore it. And I'm not saying if someone is really annoying, that you don't have to leave the room, because it's ultimately on us. We have this inner guidance within us, like whether you want to stay in a relationship or not. But if someone is behaving badly in a relationship towards us and we react, it's all on us. None of it's personal, because they're caught up in some thinking that's pretty heavy. And then we're caught up, and there's the dance. And that's also the key to healthy relationships, whether it's romantic or family or otherwise, is that when you let your partner's thinking settle, like it always does, you have a richer, wonderful, more dynamic relationship. And you can take the lead with that as a partner. Like, not take it personal when your girlfriend's on, having that time of the month and is freaking, a demon, or they're just in a bad mood and they're just not nice to you, or they're just being whatever. Because in an hour, like we always see it, they will settle, their thinking will settle, and they're back to being loving in their old self again. But man, when we're wrapped up in our thinking, that's not who we are. We're just in crazy town. We're in crazy town.
Yeah.
Let yourself get out of crazy town. Realize that's not who you are. You don't have control of your thinking. You are not your thinking, in fact. But you think you are.
That's a big one.
Yeah. And it's all made up. Like, you can, ladies and gentlemen, it's all a simulation when you think about it, because, those of you who play video games and have those, like, what do you call it? The Oculus glasses.
VR glasses.
That's not my generation. We had Atari. We had Atari.
Virtual reality glasses.
Okay, virtual. Okay, well, that's the same thing with being caught up in a video game that's a scary video game. When we fear something, it's just like a scary video game. Like, you can take off those Oculus glasses of thought and thinking, and we do all day long. We drop out of our simulation. You can walk out of the movie theater anytime you damn want to, but you choose to stay in the theater even though you hate the movie. What's that all about? And if you let your inner wisdom come through, I'm not talking about intellectualizing. I'm not talking about psychologizing here. I'm talking about you get present, you're calm, your mind quiets down a little bit, the chatter quiets down, and all of a sudden it comes to you. Like we have those moments all day long. If we didn't, we'd all be dead. Can you imagine if we were in our head all day long? I mean, that's why people that have really noisy brains end up in facilities. But then people like myself and therapists that have been trained in this understanding go to those facilities and teach them how their mind really works. And they don't take all that noise seriously anymore. It becomes less their central focus. It becomes less meaningful. It's still there, and it's not going to go away. You can't, if you try to stop thought with techniques, or try to calm it down with techniques, what happens?
This is one of the most fascinating thing about you is that first of all, you don't woo-woo about like that spiritual stuff and all that.
You can call it a ham sandwich, dude. You can call it non-bread, whatever the fuck you want. Like you can call it spirituality. You can call it a Chevy Camaro. I don't care. Like,
exactly.
Go ahead.
So you don't like stuck in that intellectualization. And another thing is you believe that it's possible for everybody, whether they are criminals in a jail or those people who psychiatry and society alienates, they call them abnormal, like you're not fit for the society. But you are saying that it's possible for everybody. And one of my...
That's not, I think it's the truth, because, and I'm going to cut you off there because it's, just to clarify that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I've been cutting you off a lot. I'm sorry.
No, I'll complete it quickly. That you don't say that it's possible for everybody. You are saying that it's their default state. Right?
Yeah. It is. It's not even a matter of discussion, ladies and gentlemen, because you do it all day long. You just don't pay attention to it enough. Look for a feel-good feeling, not force it. Look when your thinking settles. Whether you're in prison, whether you're a murderer, whether you're a wealthy gazillionaire living in Beverly Hills or wherever you are, whether you're old, young, healthy, sick, you have moments of utter peace and tranquility. It's a strange calm that comes over us. It's this transcendent feeling of expansiveness, of just feeling alive without the head shatter. We all do it, whether we're walking home from work, whether we're sitting next to our lover, laying next to our lover, whether we're reading a good book, watching a good Netflix show, playing tennis, whatever it is, listening to a piece of music, playing an instrument, even at work, even if you're a lawyer litigating a case. Like this conversation right now, you and I having, the last one we had, the pre-interview, it went by so quickly, right?
Yeah.
It was like like an hour and a half.
2 hours.
And you're like, I don't know, we don't have, 2 hours. It went by like in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm pointing to. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not, you have to do anything to get there. You don't have to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. You don't need to go on a retreat. You don't need to pray to the deities. Although that's great if you like to. If you like to meditate, great. If you like to do prostrations, great.
Yeah.
All the power to you. I'm not, free will, but you don't need to. You don't need to do all that work in order to find nirvana. Nirvana is sitting in your car eating your favorite, because I'm from Southern California, I'm going to say it, eating your favorite burrito, just staring into space and listening to like your favorite radio station and just chilling, right? Yeah. It also could be getting a check for $100,000. But again, you don't need to get a check for $100,000 in order to get to nirvana. There's a great scene in a movie, if I may share this metaphor. It's an old movie. It's called, I think it's called Collateral. It's with Jamie Foxx and Tom Cruise. Have you seen it? It's a Michael Mann film. It's like a suspense kind of. It's about a professional killer. He's on assignment, and he's hired to knock someone off, and he kidnaps a cab driver. No, you haven't seen it.
No.
Anyways, before this all happens, it's like this first 5 minutes of the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Foxx is just putting gas in his cab like any normal day. He's about to get on the freeway. He's sitting in his cab, and it gets really quiet. And he flips down his sun visor. You have sun visors in India, that block the sun.
Yeah.
And on the other, and then there's, if you open, there's also sometimes in some cars, there's like mirrors where you can check yourself out, make sure that your hair's okay. He opens up that, the mirror on his sun visor, and there's a picture of a palm tree on an island and somewhere in the Caribbean. And he stares at it for, I don't know, a minute. And he gets really calm. He's really present. He doesn't need to go to that beach somewhere in the Bahamas or somewhere in Goa, wherever, to experience what I'm pointing to. Because we experience it all the time, we just don't pay attention to it enough. It's our divine right of who we are. And the reason why, it gets caught up in that woo-woo spirituality trap is because science can't explain it, I mean, you go to like a neurologist and he's going to want to, put your brain on an MRI machine, right? Or a CAT scan.
It's a matter of language.
What the fuck is wrong with you? What?
It's a matter of language. I also catch myself using those woo-woo words, but at the end, I have to steal some words from somewhere. If I have to
call it whatever you want to call it cosmic truth. Call it whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And you know what? This is the thing. People are going to judge you because we have this thing called our psychological experience. We have this human experience of the form, and then we have this I'm going to say it spiritual experience of the formless, which is who we really are. Yeah. Beyond all reason, beyond all argument, beyond all the bullshit, the contamination of our thought and thinking that gets in the way sometimes. Creativity doesn't come from your brain. It just doesn't. Neurologists who study the brain don't get into medical school because of their brain. When they write their essay, they don't think of, they don't like go into their brain and think they want to be a neurologist or whatever. You want to be a pet psychiatrist. That comes from when you get present, when you're quiet. That comes from not your brain. We can't explain any of that. And that's truth. We have theories of how the brain works. We can tell, a doctor can tell you how your pancreas works and what it's there for, but we really don't know why it's still working. We really don't know, our heart's beating. There's an electrical pulse, but we really don't know where that electrical pulse is coming from. There's a lot of stuff we don't know about. We also don't know about miracles. Miracles happen all the time, or synchronicities. And of course, there's an explanation for synchronicities. It's, I'm sure there's an explanation for everything because that's what the brain does. The brain wants to overcomplicate everything because that's what it does. Because it's a computer. It's like a calculator. You put 2 and then you hit the plus sign and you hit 2 again. It's going to come out to 4. That's what it's designed to do. The brain is designed in a split second to find split second solutions to whatever's going on through stimuli. That's what it does. Right? But what we don't see is that the brain is like Google Translate a lot of the time. Because there's this thing called soul. There's this thing called consciousness that is underneath all the brain's thinking and doing, computating and bullshit sometimes. The brain loves you. The brain is a wonderful machine. It's a supercomputer. We all have different versions of the same operating system because the operating system, some of them have been corrupted by terrible memories, by trauma, by whatever in your past. But once you see the past is all made up, that it happened, but you unless you have a DeLorean, you're going back to 1955 in a time machine.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter, ladies and gentlemen. Doesn't. Sorry.
From consciousness, studying brain is one thing. There is hope, I will say. But from brain, trying to study consciousness, that's a hopeless route. I'll not suggest anybody go there because something which is infinite, which is ineffable. Brain works on thoughts, right? Brain works on wordings. Brain will try to conceptualize everything, right? And a concept is finite and consciousness is infinite.
Exactly. It's you are infinite, ever expanding. Shaan is infinite. Thank God we have this gift called thought, because without that, I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here. This computer wouldn't be here. Your name wouldn't be here. Your parents wouldn't have gotten together. But with that comes an understanding that it's a blessing and can be a curse for a lot of us, because just as much as it is a gift, there is some responsibility when it comes to understanding how thought and thinking and how the brain really works. Because when we, and what really, again, I don't care. Listen, whatever, if you're having a great life, ladies and gentlemen, you're doing your thing, great. Look, I'm not telling you to change anything. Don't listen to my words. Seek your own truth. I mean, honest to God. But what I am saying is if you want to suffer less, you might want to explore this a little bit more, because the professionals out there are not professional. They're doing their best and they're well-meaning. Just like when you got in a car, for those of you that drove drunk and got a DUI and had to do community service for it, at that moment at time, you're dealing with a level of thinking that you thought was the right thing to do. Psychologically innocent. Not saying there aren't consequences for that, right? You drive drunk, it's stupid. You could hurt somebody. You should pay the consequences for it. But that's not to say that it wasn't innocent. And that's not to say that it wasn't, thought that you got caught up in. See, the trick is to not beat yourself up when you do get caught up and you actually take the bait, like we all do sometimes.
Yeah.
Or try to think your way out of something, because you're just going to be chasing your own tail. Because at the end of the day, honestly, you can go to a therapist for 20 years. You can learn all kinds of modalities. You can read all the great books, but it's all there within you. Look inside of you for the answers. And people that try to think that what I just said and try to intellectualize what I say and then roll their eyes or think it's woo-woo, well, they're looking at it from the wrong place.
Right.
You can't look at it from that space, because all you're going to do is circle the wagons, because the brain doesn't understand any of that. The brain can't, and that's where it's like, again, the brain, the world of the form and the formless, they don't really talk to each other that well. So that's why rational science has its limitations. If there's a pandemic out there, and again, I'm not taking sides. Look, the science is saying you get a vaccine, wear a mask until this is over, and go on with your life. Okay, that's science. Science is created by human beings. Exactly. And science is spiritual. It has to come from spirit, because if not, then there wouldn't be science. Just like there wouldn't be thought. Like, without consciousness is wonderful, but without thought, the technology of thought and thinking, there wouldn't be a vaccine. There wouldn't be technology. There wouldn't be a car or whatever it is that you take for granted in your life. But I do know that's also not the entire answer. It can't be.
Right. You said we don't see the world as it is. We see the world from the projection of our thoughts. And
right.
Science is trying to study that world which thought is creating. So we can play that game. And actually one of my definition of wisdom is putting everything at its right place. Right? So
I like that.
Yeah, so that science has its place. And I wanted to know your thoughts on A lot of people, I believe, actually need to go to psychiatrists because there might be some physical damage to the brain or something like that, right? For what they need medication for that point, like that
I agree with
phase,
you.
right?
100%. I'm
So
not
what's
demonizing
the
any of that.
place of psychiatrists, medication, and how do you suggest one should approach a mental issue when it happens to the person?
Well, let me give you a metaphor.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way, if I can, to demonstrate the role of a doctor or psychiatrist. And look, there's some amazing doctors out there, and they've helped a lot of people. And so we got to look at it as like they're not the enemy. They're well-meaning, helping people in many respects.
Right.
The metaphor is like, you go to your, obviously if your car's malfunctioning, right? And most cars nowadays have computers, many systems built into it, sensors and systems, and they have an ECU and they have an onboard diagnostics, just like the brain. It's not as sophisticated as the brain. It's getting there. Eventually it'll be like, AI, cars are gonna be driving itself. It's gonna be really boring. I'm always, I'm a control freak, so I'm always gonna want to drive my car. But anyways, well, that's the same thing. So obviously, if you have a problem with your car, say like the car is stalling out, or there's a problem with the performance, like it's not performing as it should. You don't just keep driving the car, right? You take it to a mechanic, and the mechanic looks at it, and he plugs his diagnostic system, his computer into the it's the OBD, the OBD3, whatever diagnostic onboard, whatever car you kind of make you have at it. In this country, we have, everything like you guys do. You guys have even more cars, cooler cars than we do. And then he looks on his scanner, right? And it's like, okay, there's a fault in this system. There's a fault in that system. There's a sensor that's not working. The drive belt's not working. The torque converter is faulting. And then what does he do? He either replaces the sensor, or he looks at the system that's not working, and he fixes it. He replaces it, the sensor, or he replaces the torque converter, or whatever it is, or he adjusts something in the fuel system, and then you go on your way. Well, that's the same thing. Psychiatrists are wonderful when it comes to pharmacology, medication management, and in calming down the noise. If some of our brains are really noisy, then going to a doctor to help calm down the noise using pharmacology is wonderful. We call it training wheels. It's like training wheels. It's because, remember what the medication is a metaphor for, what it represents. It's kind of like when your computer when the hard drive's corrupt, or when your operating systems keeps freezing up, or there's something wrong with your operating system. You don't just like throw the computer away, right? You go on Google and you're like, Windows, whatever is doing this, and then it tells you how to fix it. Well, that's the same thing with medication. Remember, we're dealing with a machine between our ears that we think is like God, which is so crazy. And when we see that we have God within all of us, when we have divinity within all of us, and that the machine is the technology is thank God we have it to be that bridge between the world of the form of the physical and the world of consciousness, which is the formless, which is our true state. We have this meat jacket. Someone had a great metaphor for the human body. This meat jacket, this physical body for a certain period of time. I mean, it's like moving parts. It's gonna, as we get older, the moving parts are gonna, stop, not work as well. Well, the brain does that too, and we see that all the time with dementia and Alzheimer's and other cognitive disorders.
Right.
So when we look at psychiatry and neurology and all that stuff from that lens, yeah, if the noise is so loud that it's disrupting your ability to have peace in your life and your ability to go to work and have a semblance of a day-to-day life, by all means, go get some help. But that's a temporary thing, because we all end up returning back to thought again. You can't stop thought. It quiets down on its own. And if the noise is too loud and the brain is too zoomed in and it's stuck, like an operating system that's stuck, it freezes up, or your computer freezes up, you Control-Alt-Delete it, right? And then you upload a software patch. That's what the medication is, essentially.
I love the metaphor of training wheels and medication not being the permanent fix.
I stole that metaphor, but yes, it's a great metaphor.
And at the end, I remember you talking about people are master at anxiety. They are masters of depression. They have practiced it for 10,000 hours, which it takes to become a master at something. So at the end,
where I pulled that from? You know where I pulled that from? The 10,000 hours thing? Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote The Tipping Point. Brilliant guy. He like, you do something for 10,000 hours, you become a master at it. Well, yeah, but you can also do something for 10,000 hours. And yeah, of course. Because ladies and gentlemen, like, I have 10,000 hours of ADHD, without realizing it. Because what happens, our conditioning is when we can see beyond our conditioning, the experience, our we won't be afraid as much of our experience of called thought and thinking. We won't knock against our experience. That's what all day long, all we're doing is knocking against our very human experience of thought and thinking. And when we are able to have agency over that without doing anything, it's so liberating. It's made my life so much easier. Like, I didn't do anything special. I just kind of learned how the equipment worked, and then sharing the understanding with clients and with others. It's not a technique or like a protocol or something you need to get better at, because you're already good at it. You just don't know it. I mean, all of you are. Everybody. I don't care if you have cerebral palsy. We all have consciousness within us. We all have quiet. Whether you have, whether you are homeless, whether you are, old, decrepit, it's all there. And the more we see it, the more we're able to bounce back quicker when we are really caught up and start believing and feeling our thinking as truth. And we all get caught up, man. It's not like you can never escape it. As there was a great coach, his name is Aaron Turner. He said that, you can't beat the system. That's why that's why modalities don't work. Mm-hmm. In fact, modalities not only don't work long-term or at all, you're actually layering it with more complexity. It's actually making it louder. And anyone that tells you differently, I don't care if you have 20 years and 10 PhDs and MDs and all these initials after your name, you're full of shit. And I say that and angry because I spent so much money and time learning to go into hypnosis and I even did past life regression, which is even more funny. And I did EFT. I learned tapping. Oh yeah, I felt a little less anxious, but I look kind of silly, tapping everywhere. And look, no one wants to feel uncomfortable. No one wants to feel anxious, but you don't have to be scared of it. I mean, it's not like my panic attacks are going to go away. I mean, if they're 100% disruptive and I need to have some semblance of calm, yeah, I'll go to a doctor and I'll take a medication temporarily, but I'm not going to take it forever, just so the system self-regulates. But remember, if you can look at it as a metaphor for like a software update or a patch, basically a software patch, then you'll demonize it less and not beat yourself up over having to take a medication. You know what I mean?
I think it's the issue of supply and demand. People are, I think it's an issue of supply and demand. Rarely anybody is looking for a solution. people are looking for temporary relief, and that's what they get from all these modalities.
Well, it's the same thing as thought, though. It's like
It's the same thing as
it's the same thing. It's the same because it's also a thought program. It's also made
exactly.
up. It's all made. It's all made up, ladies and gentlemen. All of it.
Drama inside a
100%.
drama.
It's all being narrated because your whole experience, our whole experience, and if you really want to like get clarity on what I'm talking about, you know, you can hear the narrator. I mean, the narrator in our heads is constantly going and going and going. You know, our brain is the greatest producer, director, narrator, screenwriter. Should get an honorary, you know, Academy Award for bullshit that comes out of it because exactly. So if you think that a technique's going to work for you, great. Listen, again, don't listen to my words. You know, go do your own research.
Yeah, what I would
But if
say,
you want to
like,
suffer less,
yeah,
what do you have to lose? Might hurt. I mean, can't
Yeah.
hurt. I mean, might help. I don't know. And you know, it's like suffer less, enjoy more, even when you have cancer.
if you want your dramas intact and you can't leave them,
Listen,
then this is
if
not
you're
for you.
if you're an aspiring screenwriter, listen, plenty of material between your ears to take from, to glean from. But I don't know. I choose peace. And I don't, and look, I'm human just like the rest of us, you know, and I know I'm never going to win. I'm never going to beat the system. And the more I try, the more suffering. And that's why I really, and again, I'm going to say this for the third time. Don't listen to what I have to say, because if techniques work for you, I mean, go for it. I mean, it's a lot more work than you need to do. It's more, it makes it more complex, and hey, go with God. But I really loathe these. If you can go on the internet and Google techniques, and there's a million of them, and they all have their own trademark behavioral. And I'm like, really? Like I once wanted to, just for fun, just like go have a discovery call with one of these coaches that have this special like technique to stop ADHD or like calm down the brain.
Yeah.
I said, well, listen, I wanted to, and then I wanted to say to them, like, okay, so if I revert back to my old behavior, can I get my money back? Because you always revert back to your behavior, always.
That's the thing.
And then I said, well, your brain is a neuroplastic organ, and you know, it's like the gym, it's like a muscle, you know, you can, okay, you can recreate these neural pathways. Okay, but that's a lot of work. Yeah. Why? Because you're just one thought away from changing your experience. Because it's just still an experience. Like, yeah, I go to the gym because I like endorphins, and I like to be healthy. Right. But I'm not going to go, you know, learn a technique and try to strengthen, recreate these neural pathways when all I have to do is have another thought about it. Like, there's free will. Like, you don't have to believe every thought that's moving through your cortex. It's all on you. And that's why you should never take anything personal that someone says to you that's hurtful or negative. It doesn't feel good, but just because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean it's true. I mean, let's be adult about it. And that's why this industry, the personal development industry is really scary sometimes, I see out there. And that's my opinion, of course. Like, I know people are well-meaning and they want to do the right thing, but
no, when I go to a gym, I ask, like, I see, like, okay, these are the people who have built muscle in this gym, right? I see those pictures and all. But when I go to a psychiatrist, people don't even ask, like, how many people you have cured. And when they go to that enlightened gurus,
zero. And that's the thing. Not one. Look, psychiatry is really important because these people are experts in medicine, pharmacology. They're really smart people. You go to a psychiatrist like you go to a mechanic, mechanics are brilliant because they know how the machine works. They know how the car works. Yeah. The neurologist, psychiatrists know how the brain works, the body works. the physical mechanics. That's it. So it drives me crazy. Not one psychologist. I don't care. I don't care what they say or their testimonials. And hear me out. I love therapy. I think it has a purpose. But if you're going to try to cure yourself or change something, you're wasting your hard-earned money. And then if any psychologist tells you otherwise, don't even walk away, run away, because it's false advertising.
And even if you consider, like, somebody tells you like your brain is broken, like using your metaphor of a car and the mechanic, I had a effed up bike, like, which I used to ride better than people who have like more expensive bikes, more awesome bikes, because I was a good rider. I had that like deep understanding of that bike, how that bike functions, and what are the effed up things about that bike.
Right.
Okay. So from that understanding, I used to ride that motorcycle better than people who had more expensive motorcycles.
And you had a lot of fun, and you had probably more fun and enjoyment.
More fun
because you were in because you were not focused on how mechanically sound your bike was or how bright and shiny it was. You were just enjoying the moment, man. That's what I'm pointing to. There are plenty of people with horrible brain injuries.
For me, importance was riding.
They still have they still have happiness. It's like people, and I don't mean to cut you off, but it's important. Like we think like this, the gentleman that I had was the client that I had a couple of years ago that was, belligerent and really not, it was really, having a hard time and caught up, and the clarity of his thinking was pretty poor. He got quiet within like an hour, and he was himself again. Like, there are we're looking at it. We're looking at the wrong thing. Like, it's not the bike. Like, it's nice to have shiny things. Like, I like nice things too, but we think the shiny thing is going to give us that feel good feeling. That feeling of satisfaction, when in reality we're looking at it, we're pointing to it the wrong thing, the wrong way. And I'm not saying that it's not nice to have expensive things. We all like that stuff. But what I'm also saying is that you don't need the expensive stuff to have that feel good feeling, like your bike. You can have, I remember when I got my first car, I thought it was a total piece of crap. I had the same experience. I had so much fun. In fact, I had more fun with that car than I had with my new car because I didn't care. I wasn't focused on it. I was focused on the moment. I was focused on enjoying me and whoever was in the car and just that experience. I wasn't caught up in the psychological experience of the car. Like, it's 20 years old and the suspension is not great. And the car the engine is, too loud, and the muffler has a hole in it. Like, I can go on and on what was wrong with it.
Yeah.
And then I could just like enjoy the experience, like driving. And that's how I really saw like my phobia of driving on the freeway. It's like, oh man, the experience of driving is like so cool. Like, to explore new places, and like to be going at 60 miles an hour and listening to your favorite radio station, and like that's kind of cool. Like, that's imagine, and they couldn't, even 100 years ago that wasn't possible. That's not that long ago. Like, that's pretty damn cool. It's like, again, like when I'm in awe, like I'm in wonder about air travel. Like, you're sitting in this seat in this metal cylinder at 36,000 feet, going almost 600 miles an hour. Oh my God. Like, I stopped focusing on like what could go wrong.
Exactly.
Not by trying to push it down and using like, positive affirmations, but like just being present in the moment.
Yeah.
And if there's turbulence, okay, if I get scared, I'm not going to be afraid of my experience of getting scared because of what happened in the past, knowing that the past is a made up story, just like the present is. I'm going to enjoy life. You might as well. I mean, unless you like have like a fetish for like misery, that's fine too. But again, that's also another program being run.
Yeah, it's very important to have this sense of wonder. When you ask why the hell this is happening to me, my question to you is how the hell anything is happening.
I don't know.
Think about
I don't know how the can opener works. I mean, when you think about it, like, and that's an old Woody Allen express joke, but like, man, like when you see like there's so much wonder and awe.
Exactly.
Just taking a walk. I mean, look. No one's saying like that starving people, that people that have terrible, that are suffering from COVID or whatever disease it is not good. I'm not saying that. But you could still have COVID and be in your sick at home and watching your favorite Netflix or just, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be like, we're not depressed you're not depressed all the time. Like say you're diagnosed clinical depression, right? You're not depressed all the time. It's impossible.
Nobody
right?
is.
They don't give you a t-shirt like your Fearless t-shirt. People are not walking around with the diagnosis on the t-shirt. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm depressed. I mean, that's why. And again, don't listen to my words. Discover it for yourself. If you don't believe me, it doesn't matter to me. I choose to suffer less. It's like, that's why, the 12-step program falls flat on its ass, and it works for some people, and God bless them that have suffered with addiction. But it's a lot more work and a lot more suffering to get to a place that you get to every single day. And when you see it's just thought, when you see it's just thought being made up by in the moment, and that you're going to knock against your experience of thought and thinking, and you can't beat the system, well, you have a choice. No one is going to beat you up for taking a drink, and no one's going to beat you up for not taking a drink. The choice is yours. No, I'm not going to demonize alcohol. Just I'm not going to. You can do whatever you want, but if you want to have a feel good, less stress, calmer life, you got to look at like how the equipment's being used in the moment. Like it's like your motorbike. Like if you didn't know where the throttle was and you didn't know where the brake was, you'd be in a lot of trouble, right? You wouldn't be talking to me right now. You'd be over the handlebars.
Even if you had the most perfect bike, most expensive bike in the world, and you don't have the understanding of that bike, and you thought that this bike is me, I am the bike, you are in trouble.
Exactly. And the scary thing is that they don't teach this in school. Because
they don't teach anything.
Because we're so caught up in our conditioning and our beliefs, we think is truth. I hate to break it to you, ladies and gentlemen, it's not. 100% of it. 100% of it. It's made up in real time, and just like your fear and your anxiety is made up in real time. And you don't have to take the bait. And if you do, okay, that's fine too. You take the bait. There's nothing wrong with taking the bait and getting scared or there's nothing wrong with grieving. And there's nothing wrong with any emotion. It's how we look at our experience. If you have a better relationship with your experience of anxiety or your experience of depression or your experience of fear, and you're not scared of it so much, the less scary it's going to be. And the less you'll get caught up in it. Like we fear our daily experience of life up in our head so much that we're scared of being scared.
Right. Anxiety about the anxiety. Like before.
And again,
before
I'm not saying I know what again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not pushing this on anybody, but just like your motorcycle metaphor, like you can have a $10,000 performance, whatever. I don't know anything about motorcycle or bikes, or you can have a jalopy like you have. If you don't know how to ride it, you're going to have the same outcome. The same thing with how mind works and how the system works. You try to fix the system with modalities, you're going to have the same result. I don't care what someone tells you. I'm willing to bet the bank. I don't care if the person's been practicing whatever for 30 years and has 14 diplomas. That doesn't mean shit to me.
Yeah.
Diplomas on their wall. There are plenty of people with 20 diplomas on their wall. They're horrible.
Mechanics have their place, but mechanics aren't going to make you a peaceful rider. Mechanics aren't going to make you a better rider.
Exactly. So you learn how to ride a motorcycle. Exactly. If you learn how to ride the motorcycle, just like you learn how the mind really works and how the system works, that it's perfectly designed to handle any kind of anything in our psychological experience and our thinking, then you'll see your inner resilience. You'll be more resilient. You'll be more hopeful. You'll be less apt to take the bait when your thinking naturally goes sideways. And if you take the bait, well, don't be afraid of taking the bait, or don't be afraid of the anxiety, because nothing's going to happen to you. And if it goes to that extreme where you have a panic attack and you need to pull over on the freeway, well, you need to pull over on the freeway, but it'll be done and you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But we don't share that with the population. We don't tell people, we don't share that understanding. Exactly. We need to fix it. It's a war against whatever. I'm editorializing now, but instead of us, because it's not as exciting, right? It doesn't sell advertising when we look at it how it really works.
It doesn't give pleasure. It doesn't make people money. So it's not popular.
It's not popular.
You mentioned about my t-shirt, which reminded me
I love it. Where did you get? Is that like?
No, why I wore this? Let's talk about your book a little. What's the name, when it's coming out, and what's it's about, and where people get it?
Well, thank you for wearing that t-shirt. It's a badass t-shirt. And that's so awesome. Did you just have that t-shirt, or?
No, I had this.
Yeah, I thought so.
It's a beautiful t-shirt. It doesn't say
so cool.
Fearless. It says fearless.
Okay, whatever, man. It's still so cool. So, my book is called Fearless, and it's about the journey I share. What I'm pointing to, what I'm talking about today, about two major life events that happened to me that made me see, when I realized it didn't make me see, that I've been seeing it all along. And then it didn't have to be a tragedy, these two events, to make me see. Was the ultimate liberating and ultimate kind of enlightening experience, I guess. I hate the use of woo-woo. And the book, it will be out in probably late fall at this point. It'll be available in Barnes & Noble, booksellers online, Amazon, of course, all the major retailers online. Very excited about it. And, if my hope is, if I can, uplift and make people see who they really are underneath all that thinking and all that misery that they perceive as true, then I've done my job. That if I can point people back home to who they are, who they really are, then there's nothing else to say. There really isn't. I go through my story. I share my story, what happened, but then I give little teases of moments when I'm not so caught up and scared, right? Like I'll give an example. Yeah. What I'm experiencing in the moment. I don't even say anything. I don't even share why. I'm just sharing it. I'm not even explaining why I'm sharing. I'm just sharing it. And if I can instill a feel-good feeling in some people by reading this, I don't know what's going to happen. You might hate the book. I might get hate mail. I have no idea. But it did happen. And I think that it's important for people to read it. And if I can, help people in some way, then great. If not, then, well, there's always another book. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If before I ask my last question, if someone wants to connect with you, where they can find you?
Sure. They can go to my website. It's www.samledconsulting.com, samledconsulting.com, or my Instagram, samledconsulting. They can DM me if they want to set up a discovery session. Also, I have a podcast too, which Shaan, I want to get you on soon.
Sure.
It's called The Fearless Now, of course. I'm not too difficult to figure out. It's The Fearless Now. And those of you that it resonates with, please like and subscribe and comment. The more support I get from listeners like you, the more I can produce some pretty good content and some great episodes and share this understanding with people that really need to hear it. So please like and subscribe. The Fearless Now. All I ask is like and subscribe and comment if it really resonates with you. So the algorithm picks it up and I can get more episodes out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Links for all that. I'll put it in the show notes.
Great.
And my last question, what will be your message to the world?
You had to leave the hardest question for last, right? Thanks. Wow, that's $1 million question. And it actually isn't. The message for the world is, can I read it? Oh no, this is great. This is a great way. This is a great.
I think we're waiting for that.
I know, for like 2 hours. Yeah, I've been wanting. So this is a Terence McKenna quote. Those of you who don't know who Terence McKenna is, go look him up. It's not about all the psychedelics he used, or it's about who he was as a person. And he used plant medicine as a vehicle. You don't use plant medicine to get where I'm pointing to, or this understanding, because plant medicine, again, it's like a modality. You don't need any of that, because we all are drugs and chemicals. I mean, we have them secreted through our body. So exactly. This is a Terence McKenna quote that we can end on. Are you ready? Nature loves courage. You make that commitment, and nature will respond to that commitment by removing impossible obstacles. Dream the impossible dream, and the world will not grind you under. It will lift you up. But this is the trick. This is what all these teachers and philosophers who really counted, those who really touched that alchemical gold, this is what they understood. This is the shamanic dance in the waterfall. This is how magic is done, by hurling yourself into the abyss and discovering it's a featherbed. The featherbed is presence. The featherbed you all lay in all day long, but you don't pay attention to it enough. And you're all just one thought away from laying in that featherbed. That's a great way to end it, I think.
Yeah, this quote, every time I listen to it or read it, this one gives me a goosebump. And it is one of the favorite quote of mine in the whole world. And before starting this thing, it was one of the inspiration as well. So I'm surprised you mentioned it. It's another.
Terence McKenna's quote?
Yeah.
That's exactly what the principles are. Like, you don't need to be wealthy to have a featherbed. You don't need to be healthy. The featherbed is always there. We just complicate it because we have a brain that complicates things. So when you see the brain is doing its dance innocently, it's very liberating to also understand that there's way, way, way more out there than just your thinking and just the brain and your conditioning. When you unpack your conditioning and you unpack your beliefs about yourself and the world, and that doesn't become scripture or truth anymore, and you can see beyond your brain's very narrow angle, concept-driven system, or other people's. Think for yourself. Do your own searching, and you'll find it. Not in your mind, not in your brain, but in that space between thought or before thought or within thought. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah. BYOFG, right?
The what?
BYOFG.
That was good, man. That was awesome.
I let them figure it out.
Seriously, you need to trademark that and make t-shirts.
Exactly.
But Terence McKenna, again, he's sharing the same thing in that quote that what I've been trying to share for the last hour and 40 minutes. He does a lot better job than I do. It's not that complicated. Go within, you'll find the answers. It's not out there. And if you think it's out there, well, you're looking at it from the wrong perspective because your brain doesn't know shit. So thank you, sir.
Brain likes to complicate things, and you'll never reach to what he's talking about through intellectualization.
No,
I think
all of you are, I've already reached the alchemical gold. All of you are that diamond. And it's okay if it's tarnished by poo-poo and layered in lipstick, as Michael Neal would say. And so just be okay with that too. And you will liberate yourself from decades, if you have, like I have suffered for decades, and you'll have just live a better life, just more comfortable, fun life. So
I think
thank you, sir. It's an honor to be
the best place to end this.
Yes.